Sweating isn't about punishment, it's about freedom. And when I talk about sweating today, I want you to really think of it just kind of as an overarching word for exercise in general. But I use sweating often because a lot of times we meet women who do a lot of cardio. And so that's generally their main form of exercise. So if you've ever felt like exercise is one more chore on your never-ending list of to-dos, or you use it maybe as a punishment for your food choices. I've been there, so we are going to talk about this. We're going to go through how I turned exercise from being a punishment to it really being a necessary form of self-care. And I hope that by listening to this today, it starts to shift your mindset as well. But before we go any further, I do have a random request. I feel like this podcast would be much more impactful if you listened to it while you were moving. Now, you can be doing laundry or vacuuming or walking. I just want you to be moving. I think, of course, I want you to listen to it in the car. Of course I do. But I do prefer that you do it moving because I really would like you to think about what I'm sharing with you today as you're moving your body, as a new perspective if this is something you've never considered. So I'm going to talk about two factors that had to come into play, but we'll go over that a little bit later in the episode for me to really make this mindset shifts. But before we go down that road, I want you to know that movement does not need to be something you do because you feel guilty. Right? You feel guilty for eating a specific meal. You feel some kind of shame or embarrassment. And I have seen over the years this being a trend with a lot of women that I meet. And I know for myself that this has been a place that I have been as well. It was almost like exercise was doing time for bad behavior. I mean, that's kind of awful to say, but that is the reality. I mean, I would have moments where I would, binge, and I was using exercises and cardio as a way to undo my binging, right? And by all means, this podcast is not any kind of advice by any means. I'm not a mental health professional, and I don't even claim to go that route, but I'm just sharing my stories and stories of experience here because for so many years, exercise has been a transactional activity. And I feel like that is still common to this day. It's a transactional activity. And what I mean by that is we go into an exercise program or workout or what have you with the intention of getting something in return, right? And the something is generally a visual component. It's like, I want to look like a certain thing. I don't want to look like how I look right now, right? We're thinking something is wrong with us now and we want to shapeshift that. Or maybe you're loving your body, but you want to change some things about your body. This can still apply to you in the sense that we have to really think about taking that transactional piece of it out of the equation when it comes to the longevity piece of why we're doing this. Now, of course, you want a hot body. Of course, you want to be healthy and hot. And I love those things. I talk about those things all the time. And listen, I'm a vain ass bitch. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you that that's not what I also want as well. But what I am going to ask you is, as you're listening to this podcast and I'm sharing some stories and some data with you as well, I want you to think about how we can start to reframe movement and exercise and think of it more as an act of self-care and self-love versus making this some kind of chore or punishment that we associate it with and have for so many years, a lot of us. I also do feel like this is something that I have noticed with age, and maybe it's the era I was born. If there's anyone else born in the 70s, right? I was born in the late 70s, and growing up with a lot of the marketing and dogma around diets and things of that nature, it was a lot harder for me to shift this mentality. I'm here to share with you there are two things that were super impactful, and I'm hoping you take some time to think about this in what makes sense for you. Okay, the two factors were the mindset shifts that I had to make and then understanding true energy balance. Okay, and we're going to go into both of these. So let's start with the mindset shifts that I've had to make over the years. So now exercise and eating well for my body most of the time is just a normal daily practice. Now, it's not a perfect, it's a practice, which means I still put effort into this every single day. And some days look better than others. Okay. I feel you. I got lots on my plate. And so this is just the reality of life. There's zero expectations for perfection if you are listening here on my podcast. So, mindset shifts that I had to make. I started to really have to reframe it in thinking exercise was something I needed to do to my body for it to look a certain way, is I'm exercising for my body. Okay, let that sink in. I'm exercising for my body. And I say this often, and I'm cheeky about it, but your body, your meat suit, your loving meat suit is the only place you have to live. So if you can think about exercise in the mind frame of I'm exercising for the only place I have to live so it can live here longer. And it's hard when you feel like you're so out of shape or you're so far removed from feeling comfortable in your body, or maybe you're so disconnected to your body. But we're going to talk about that a little bit more. Okay. Some other mindset shifts were that I had a moral obligation to my children. I brought them into this world. I did the best I could when I didn't know any better. And as I started to learn more, I realized I couldn't be feeding myself one way and then feeding my kids a different way because I didn't want to deal with having to now change their bad eating habits, right? Because it was my fault. I was buying the junk. I was buying the fish sticks. I was buying, the Taco Bell for my youngest son, right? And so I had to then decide, I'm the parent. I am here to decide what's in their best interest when it comes to their health. And letting them eat those things is not in their best interest if I want them to live a healthy lifestyle in the future. I wanted to lead by example, right? I mean, my story is a little bit different, but I was in the health and fitness industry 20 years ago pretty consistently and have been. And I want to walk my talk. There's periods of time during the year where, just like everyone else, food's in more abundance, movement's a little bit less, AKA it's the holidays and you're enjoying things and the scale is going to fluctuate. That's a chapter of your life. That's not a permanence. And I would rather be okay with accepting 5 extra pounds on my body during the holidays so I can make cookies with my granddaughters. I can have, my stepmom's coconut cupcakes, and I can enjoy these things because I know they come once a year and I'm not going to be trying to cram them into my macros. I know that I'm still working out every day for my body or moving my body in some way. I'm eating whole foods 80 to 90% of the time, and I'm learning how to do this by really thinking about my body first and foremost, and not how I feel about some of the choices that I have to make to stay disciplined. And to sum that all up, I guess the biggest takeaway is the better quality of life goal is something that is top of mind for me with everything. And again, it's a practice. It's not to say I don't make small little choices that I know won't harm my quality of life. It's the majority of the choices that make up the better quality of life. It's going to be those things most of the time. I also really changed how I spoke about my workouts. So when I was still raising small children at home and was married and was doing mom life, I would go to the gym and I started to notice I would have negative attitudes about it, right? I was usually preparing for a bodybuilding show, or there was some body goal at the end of it, like complete body goal. And it was usually a hardcore one. And so one of the things I started to retrain myself to say, rather than I have to work out still, or I still have to work out, or I still have to get my cardio, is I get to work out today. I'm going to work out today. I haven't got to it yet today. Instead of making it something that was a drudgery or a chore, yes, it's going to be annoying sometimes. Yes, it's going to be the last thing that I want to do for the day. I have a million fires to put out, but something that helps is when you speak about it out loud to others. There's something about it that starts to kind of shift how it lands in your own brain and how you start to think about it. Listen, I don't know, it's some woo-woo shit, but it really works, okay? Give it a shot. And then lastly, one of the things that has helped me over the years, especially as I get into a mode where maybe I'm not wanting to take care of my body and exercise. I'm going through something, or life is lifey, and I'm deprioritizing myself, right? This happens. Things happen in the family. People get sick, kids get sick, jobs are, unpredictable, what have you. And oftentimes your health and fitness moves to the back burner. And I've been a back burner bitch off and on. And in fact, in the last couple months of this year, not even really so much because of holiday eating. It was just a lot of travel and work stuff. So it was kind of chaotic, but anchoring to something that has a bigger meaning is always super helpful when it comes to a mindset shift around your exercise. And unfortunately, sometimes this has to come by way of really big life-altering events for some people. And I've seen it time and time again. We have a lot of women over 40 in our programs. And I've seen things such as, deaths in the family, or severe illnesses in the family, or heart attacks, or something with their body breaks down, or somebody they love has been taken from them. And it is a very rude awakening to the fragility that is the human life, and how much control we actually truly have over how long we're going to be here with our health, right? So I shared the story in podcast probably earlier, but it's been a minute, and y'all, I'm PMSing, so I'm going to try not to start the waterworks. But I have a third sister that I don't speak about often, and she was born with a congenital heart defect. It was a very tough time on our family, and my middle sister and I, we kind of took a back seat because our parents were triaging the situation at hand, right? They were just given this precious child who didn't really have a very positive outlook in terms of the future of her health. And we really didn't know how long she was going to be around. At the time I want to say I was 10 going on 11. And I very much vividly remember this. And when my sister was born, it was very evident, based off of just how she looked as an infant, that something was not right. She had very, very long limbs, very long fingers. Her skull was definitely shaped differently, and it was terrifying. We really did not know what to expect. And she ended up living for 3 years. And during that 3 years, even as a child who was 10, I felt like I had to grow up really quick. And I watched her very frequently because, unfortunately, my mom had to go back to work. We were just a blue collar family. My parents weren't poor, but we were pretty broke. And so my mom had to go back to work, and my dad and I were home with her quite often. And so I spent a lot of time with her. We would take her to the park and things of that nature. My mom worked the night shift, and she was very intelligent. So mentally incredibly sharp. She just physically could not move her body very well because she had this birth defect called Marfan syndrome. And so it just presents with really long limbs, and it's very challenging for people born with this to walk. They do a lot of times, but she didn't unfortunately have that ability. So we would take her to the park and she would sit in the stroller and we'd have her in the little umbrella stroller and my dad and I and my other sister walking her there, and she would cry and she would see the other kids running around and she was so upset that she could not play with the other kids because she was a very social little girl. She just, like, mobility wise was a challenge, and she eventually learned how to crawl and scoot around, but she never could walk, and she had braces on her legs, and it was a whole situation. So anchor to something that has a bigger why when you have a day where you just don't feel like doing it, or you go into just that mode where you put it off for too long because you know it's going to hurt to get started, or you're afraid to learn something new, right? It's really deepening that why. All right, let's lighten it up a little bit. So the second factor that I had to understand was really true energy balance. And what I mean by that is I was eating a lot more than I thought. And this is actually a trend, right? So oftentimes we'll see this as we eat more than we think. We'll think, oh, I had 1,500 calories probably today, when sometimes you're way off. It's like double that. And I was definitely guilty of this. And the other issue is that I started to understand that when you exercise, you truly burn less than you really think. And so using these two things as a form of punishment is just really just getting you to feel like you're chasing your tail, right? You're chasing your tail. And I definitely started to realize that cardio and just aiming for calorie burn on my watch was not the answer, right? Cardio was just not the answer for sustainable fat loss in general. And this was something I had to learn after doing, years and years of jazzercise and step aerobics. And this was what was hip 20 years ago, by the way. Actually, I heard step aerobics was coming back. So if you're doing step, that's awesome, because I'm kind of considering it again, but more for the enjoyment factor and, in dance, and just because I love to move my body. But this is where we have to really think about the facts about energy balance. And, is it really worth it for me to be trying to sweat and really kill and crush my workouts to meet a certain calorie goal? Or should I just be real smart about it, right? The way that I approach it and the strategies and the mindset around it and the reason why I'm doing it is such a smarter approach than white knuckling it, grueling through it, hating it, and not feeling like it's something that you want to stick to. And that's a lot of us. Now, for me, it's a lot different now. There was a time when, like I mentioned earlier, I was eating a lot and trying to balance it out by over-exercising, right? And this just starts a really unhealthy relationship with exercise and food, honestly. So I would really look at okay, let's say I was tracking macros or what have you, or following a meal plan. And then if I went off plan, air quotes, and had 3 Oreo cookies or 4 Oreo cookies, I would look at the bag of the Oreos. I would figure out how many calories that was. And then I would either hop on my treadmill and run, because this was about 20 years ago. I would run to burn those calories off, or I would go down to the gym and I would do the stair mill and try to burn those calories off. And it was miserable. I'm punishing myself every second and thinking, why did you have that Oreo? That was stupid. This is what you get. This was how I would talk to myself. How would I expect that my body was going to do anything for me talking to it that way? I think about the studies that they do, and I think they still do these in school, and I don't know, it's been a minute. I'm removed from that much, but the studies where they would put 2 plants in, I think it was plants, in 2 separate rooms, and they would play uplifting, positive music in one and negative, aggressive music in the other, and all the other circumstances being the same, there was a stark difference in how one grew versus the other, right? I'm sure it's deeper than that, but do the search. Go on the YouTubes, go on Google. I'm sure you'll find plenty of visuals for that. But if that is possible for a plant, a living organism, plant. Don't you think the same would be true for your body? So when you go to the gym or you are punishing yourself by eating like a super strict diet and your gym time is now your prison sentence for how you've been eating or how you've been neglecting yourself, how do we feel that that is going to improve our situation and our mental health? I'd be hard pressed to think that that would do you a service. It's likely a disservice. But that was my life. And now it's very different, right? I walk as my primary source of movement every day, right? It's not my cardio, it's my movement and activity because I sit a lot. And I absolutely love dancing. So usually if I'm not working, there's music on and I'm dancing around the house like a maniac by myself, or I am taking a class and getting some cardio in. Obviously, the primary meat and potatoes of my health and longevity exercise routine is strength training, which is what I talk about exhaustively here on this podcast for good reason, especially the more and more that studies are coming out. But I do cardio now more consistently as a form of heart health and making sure that I'm meeting minimum requirements for health and longevity based off of what the American Heart Association is recommending, because I want to be here a long time, right? I have granddaughters now and my kids are grown and I want to experience life and travel and I want to do lots of fun things. And I can only do those things in the only place I have to live when it's actually taken care of properly. Your meat suit, my meat suit. I mean, it's my meat suit, but your meat suit. And most importantly of all, if I have lost you, please come back. And the mental health component has been my pillar for keeping movement and reminding myself when I have moments that I do not feel like going to the gym or going for a walk or moving my body. This has been instrumental for me. And we're going to go into a bit more about that next. Now, the data shows that movement is incredible for mental health. There is a study done by Rethorst CD and Trivedi 13, and I'm probably butchering that, but if you want the sources, I can absolutely put them in the show notes. But strength training, brisk walking, regular movement can be as effective as therapy for mild to moderate depression. Insane. Now, as someone who has suffered from depression in the past, I was on antidepressants for over a decade, and I went off of them when I got pregnant, and that was a challenge, right? I had been on them for so many years and I just knew whether they were safe or not, I wanted to be off them during my pregnancy. And so I had to wean myself off of them. And the way that I was able to maintain that was through my exercise. And at the time, I was exercising pretty regularly at the time I got pregnant. My ex-husband was very into fitness at the time, and that was really one thing we had in common. And I was not a bodybuilder, but my exercise was definitely way more improved around the time I got pregnant with my youngest son. And I just kept it up in some way, shape, or form, walking when I was pregnant with him and things of that nature. But it boosts your feel-good endorphins and hormones, right? And it's hard because when you're depressed, you typically just don't have the energy to do the things that you need to do to kind of get out of that blue mood. And some of it obviously goes way deeper, and that's conversation beyond this podcast. But I want you to think back to the beginning of the podcast when I said sweat's not about punishment, it's about freedom. And how this ties to this conversation around mental health and why it's a pillar for me. And if you find that you struggle with blue mood or, light depression, when you work out, it is a common fact that these endorphins start rushing, right? There is something about it. You start to have a more clear, I know that if I'm struggling with something, whether it's like a relationship or a business, issue or whatever, if I get out and move, it's so much easier for me to solve the problem or start to unravel the pieces that I need to make movement forward. So a clearer head, think about this, right? Exercise helps with boosting your mood and is almost as effective as therapy, which helps you have clearer thoughts, which helps you then hopefully make better decisions, right? In your life, whether it's life decisions or around your nutrition or other movement going forward. When you're making those better decisions, you start to improve your life. Your life improves as a byproduct of making better decisions in your favor, which usually equals a healthier life. And when you have a healthier life, you have more freedom. Your body gives you so much more freedom. It gives you that. When you take care of it, it gives you freedom. It gives you the freedom to be able to be on this planet a lot longer than most people your age, to do things in your body that you would never dream possible looking at maybe your family history, right? This is one thing that I think about often. So it has given me so much freedom, and it's honestly not as hard as you think. I want to give you some simple tips, okay? And we're going to wrap it up. I wanted this to be more of a shorty episode, but I love y'all and I want to talk to you for a long time. But I want you to find joy and think about all of the bigger picture benefits that exercise gives you. So your list of reasons why you should be taking care of your body outweighs the reasons why you shouldn't. And I am not one to shit on you, okay? But in this right of where I'm really pleading with you because I want you to be here for a long time, I want you to really think about why you should exercise. Now, the second thing is don't overcomplicate it, right? When you think about moving your body every day, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, get outside, go for a walk, pace around your house. If you have stairs, going up and down the stairs, just move around, get your body moving, get used to being a more active individual and find ways to maybe multitask something that you enjoy with your movement. And know that you're doing two things that are going to benefit you in the long haul. Maybe you are listening to this podcast while you go for a walk, or you're working out, or maybe you do some yoga, bust out a mat and do some yoga. The next thing I'll say, and I'm going to leave you with some parting words of love, is the best thing that you can do for yourself is to find people, friends, or community of people where this mindset is the default. This mindset about caring about your body and treating your body like you want it to be here for a long time and learning about how to do that and not making exercise and sweat equity and calorie burn a reason for it or a punishment. Find a community that prioritizes that, right? Deprioritize the urgency and the only reason why you do something or a program as the reason needs to be for you. It's for you. It's doing your body a service rather than the community really glorifying it being a punishment for your body with things like, oh, sweat is fat crying, or let's whittle down that muffin top, or creating any kind of feeling that you're doing this because you hate your body. No, we're doing these things. We're getting strong because we love our bodies. We are learning about how to feed our bodies right without strict diets because we want to enjoy our food and we want our bodies to feel good and healthy when we move them and when we move about the world. And the banging body that you want and you so desperately put your body through this punishment for the transaction of, my friend, my beautiful, precious goddess, that will be the byproduct and the outcome as you are doing the things to love your body and do for your body. Those things come as a result. I promise you. I promise you that by exercising and eating well and doing these things because you love your body will reward you not only with how you feel, but how you think and the reflection back in the mirror. I promise you, I would not steer you wrong. Now, if any of this resonated with you, I would love to know. And I would love for you to move your body today. Listen to this podcast again if you need to, with these things top of mind. Of course, while you're exercising, it's going to be the best. It's how your body will connect with the information. And if you literally need this mindset in your life and you don't have it, and you want also the tools to transform, right? The exercises to be doing and the nutrition to be thinking about and prioritizing, it's a perfect time to start. We would love for you to join us, right? Let this be your sign. This is your sign. You deserve to feel good. You deserve to feel good. So if you're ready for more of me, more of my crew, more of the bad bitches who think exactly like this, plus tools and support, coaching, all that fun stuff, I'd love it if you would join us in the Goddess Body Project. It is my signature program. It's 12 weeks, and it is a deeper dive into obviously all the tools you need for body transformation success from a visual component, but more importantly, the mindset and all of the shifts that you need to make this something that you do as a part of who you are. It's not something you do at the beginning of every year. I'd love to have you. We start Monday, the 27th. And of course, we'll put all the links you need to check it out in the show notes. But regardless, send this episode to someone you love who needs to hear this today, and find your tribe. I love you and have a great day.